You're live.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Scottsdale Environmental Advisory Commission's monthly meeting that is being held virtually and in person on Wednesday, January 19th, 2022. My name is Natalie Christman-Lazar, and I am your chair. It is 5:30 p.m., and I call this meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Certainly, Chair. This is Tim Connor. Natalie Kurzman-Lazar. Chair.
Present.
Vice Chair Coletta.
Present.
Commission members Tammy Bossy. She may be joining us later. Commission member Uta Brady.
Present.
Commission member Walter Kukulik. And Commission member Ryan Johnson.
I'm here. Thank you.
And Commissioner Andrew Shep.
Present.
Great. I just want to remind the people in the room today to make sure you turn on your microphone to speak. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next item on our agenda is public comment. I see no public people present. However, we have received a public comment from Mr. Mike Cataldo of Orange Blossom Lane, and that will be entered into the record. Okay, so the first item on our agenda is confirmation that all the ethics code training and personal interest disclosure forms have been signed and received. Do we have them all?
Chair, this is Sam Brown. We have confirmed that all ethics and PID forms have been signed and submitted to the clerk's office.
Great,
Thank you.
thank you. Next item is approval of the regular meeting minutes for December 15th, which I hear Tony has thrown down the gauntlet that this was a speed meeting. So do we have a meeting minutes that we want to approve? Anybody want to make a motion or have any comments on the meeting minutes?
Chair, I think those were sent up previously. I make a motion to approve.
Commissioner Brady, I second the motion.
Thank you. We've moved and seconded. Can we go ahead and have a roll call vote?
Certainly. Chair Lazar, Kurzman-Lazar,
Approved?
Vice Chair Coletta,
Approved.
Commission member Tammy Bossy is not yet.
I am here. I'm
Oh,
here.
good. Okay, she's here. Good. Commissioner Brady,
Approved.
Commissioner Kukulik,
Approved.
Commissioner Johnson,
Approve. Thank you.
and Commissioner Schleck.
Check. Approved.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. Thank you. It is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just a point of order, if you all on the phone have a question or would like to be recognized, we unfortunately cannot see you. So we will be relying on staff to kind of bring you up as for our attention. So that might be something that you need to be a little bit patient, but we will definitely make certain that you are recognized. Our first item that we have on our agenda tonight is a presentation from ASU's Rob and Melanie, Melanie. Yes, there it is. Walton Sustainability Solutions. I don't have my glasses on. Services. It is associated with, of course, our sustainability goals workshop, and we're very excited to have you. Are they ready to present?
Very
I
good.
believe we are.
Okay, very good.
Great. Can you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves since we don't see you?
Sure. Hello, everybody. It's Mark Roseland from ASU. And I thought I could see the rest of my team, but I actually can't see anybody except myself. So if the rest of my team is here, if you would introduce yourselves as well, that'd be great. Maybe not.
No, I'm here. Hi, my name is Bill Campbell. I'm pleased to be here again with y'all folks.
And Mark, this is
I was trying to unmute. This is Raj Butch, also with the Walton team at ASU. Thanks, Mark.
Good. Thank you, Raj and Bill. So again, I'm Mark Roseland. I'm a professor of sustainable community development at ASU, and I work closely with the Walton Sustainability Solutions Service. So what we'd like to do this evening is we haven't really had a chance to talk about our work for a while with you, so we wanted to do that. I wanted to go over the timeline and review the process and review the work we've done to date, and get some feedback from you on the citizen workshops that are upcoming and our meetings with council, and make sure that we have time for to discuss any concerns you have and do questions and answers. So I thought I was going to be running the slides, but I'm not. So thank you to whoever is. So basically, this is the timeline that we have. So here we are in blue on January 19th. We have a series of meetings with this group, and we see you as kind of our steering committee for developing the sustainability plan for the city and the community of Scottsdale. So we will be meeting with you again on February 16th and excuse me, March 16th, and you can see the other dates in blue. But we also have a series of other meetings that are going on in a cycle. So we've been doing workshops with the staff. That's the Scottsdale Sustainable Steering Team. I think, sorry, that's SSST workshop in green. And then we are also meeting with council members in small groups in the week of March 14th. And there are citizen workshops in the week of February 28th. Sorry, out of sequence a little bit. But the whole thing comes together with us giving you a draft report based on our research and our meetings with all of these different entities. And that timeline is that we will give you a draft May 11th, I think is the due date there, the target date, and give you a presentation on May 18th. And then you will have, excuse me, some time to reflect on that and comment on it, and then bring it forward to council, and then there will be, or to recommend it to go forward to council. And then there will be an additional process with the city for approval in the fall of 2022. But this is the basic overview of the various balls that we are juggling at this time. So I hope that makes sense. And if not, we can definitely come back to it and answer questions. Let's move on, please. So we are, excuse me, guarantee you I'm not contagious. It's asthma. We are doing a series of workshops, and the one that we did in December, we didn't get a chance to meet with you then, but we did want to go over some of that today. Was the first one was a sustainability scan. So for that workshop, we looked at best practices from other municipalities. What do sustainability plans look like in other municipalities in Arizona, in the country, and around the world? And we also did a series of interviews with about 30 staff from the city about what has been tried before in Scottsdale, with what success and challenges and why. And then we are now doing a workshop. We basically have a set of 3 workshops, or three questions. And the first one, beyond the scan, is what does success look like? And we just did this one with the staff. So we're really trying to get a sense of what does it mean to be a sustainable Scottsdale? And from that, the next 2 questions are, once we've articulated it a little more clearly what success looks like, how do we measure success? What are the metrics that we would use? And then how do we achieve success? So what are the actions? So in planning speak and strategic planning speak, this is goals and metrics and actions, but we're trying to keep this in plain English as much as we can, and use questions like, what does success look like? How do we measure it? And how do we achieve it? Next slide, please. So we presented the scan to you in November, I believe it was, but we didn't get a chance to have a workshop with you. So I know you've been asked to review a video of a workshop presentation we did to staff, but I just want to go over a few of the slides to just refresh your memory, because you might have looked at that a long time ago. So we asked the question, why a sustainability plan? What's the purpose of this? So a sustainability plan provides a means of bringing everything together, and for a vision for future development under a set of goals and metrics. And the purpose here is to get a single framework for measuring the impact of municipal programs on the local environment, on the local economy, and the community's livability. So the three legs of the sustainability stool, if you like that approach, or the three dimensions or pillars of environment, economic, and social objectives. We're looking at all three of those, trying to bring that together so that we have a common framework for action. Next slide, please. So how do we define sustainability? Again, there's lots of ways of defining it, but pretty much they all come down to this integration of environmental, economic, and social. A pretty classic way is this notion of the intersecting Venn circles, or the Venn diagram. We have all kinds of things that we put in the environment category, and we have things we put in the economic category and the social category, and there's some things that overlap two of those, but we're particularly interested in the areas that overlap all three. That's what we're focusing on for sustainable development and for a sustainability plan for Scottsdale. So that obviously is going to include sustainable natural and built environment, and sustainable economic development, and equitable social environment. But the challenge, of course, is bringing it all together. Next slide, please. So in the report, the SCAN report, we looked at best practices in sustainability planning. We talked about creating comprehensive plans. But again, what we meant by comprehensive plans is that they address all three dimensions. It's not just a matter of talking about environmental sustainability. That really doesn't make any sense in this day and age, unless you're also talking about economic and social sustainability. We talked about creating a unifying vision for all stakeholders so that we can set appropriate and relevant goals, having focus areas to establish common ground on high impact ways to advance sustainability, and then a series of other things that we just called other practices. So we talked briefly about using established frameworks, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on this tonight, but it's worth mentioning that yes, cities are creating their own unique sustainability plans, but they are also using and aligning their plans and their goals with established frameworks for planning, implementation, and monitoring. And some examples of the goals of the frameworks that we looked at, there are the Sustainable Development Goals, which were adopted by the United Nations in 2015 and are being implemented by many cities worldwide. Not so many in the US, but San Jose and Pittsburgh are doing that. There's an organization called C40 with basically the biggest carbon emitters worldwide, and who are also showing that they're very serious about climate action. And Pittsburgh and Los Angeles and New York City and Boston are all part of the C40 group, which now includes, I think, over 100 cities, not just the original 40. ICLEI stands for International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, now called ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability. They are a global organization that also has a USA branch, and Several of the staff from the City of Scottsdale have been doing a structured technical assistance program with ICLEI. There's also a few others that are worth mentioning. The International Standards Organization has an ISO standard for sustainable cities. There's also a Resilient Cities Network. There's a Global Footprint Network. And there's some really interesting work around the notion of donut economics, which is the upper left of that group on the right. Happy to talk to you more about that if you like, but the basic idea there is that we need to address the shortfalls that we have underneath our social floor, which is things like providing adequate housing and transportation and employment and so on, without overshooting our ecological ceiling, so our ecological limits about biospheric capacity, the ozone layer, and so on. So many cities worldwide are using these standards, but not in the US yet. Next slide, please. So we did talk to over 30, I guess it was over 40 staff in a series of interviews with multiple staff per interview across 25 functional areas or departments in the cities. And I won't sort of read this list, but these are some of the roles of staff that we talked to. And the city was very helpful in kind of grouping people for us so that we were able to have an interesting mix in the 15 interviews that we did. And again, what we were trying to really understand is clearly Scottsdale has been thinking about sustainability before now. And we wanted to know how did that thinking manifest? What kinds of initiatives have been done? What's the institutional memory? What has been tried? How did that go? Why or why not? And what are the lessons learned? So all of that is in the scan report. Next slide, please. And then we pulled it all together by referring to the general plan, which obviously is the general plan 2035 is the guiding document that has been approved by council and by the voters. And there are 7 chapters in that, as you know. One of them is about communication and engagement. I can't remember the exact name. So we took that out because we said that is cross-cutting. And we took the other 6 and put them around the edges of this hexagon. And one of them in the general plan is called sustainability and environment. But again, that doesn't quite make sense to us given our desire to talk about sustainability as integrating economic, social, and environmental objectives. So we took environment, made it one of these 6 areas, and the way we're approaching this is that these 6 areas around the hexagon: community well-being, character and culture, innovation, prosperity, environment, revitalization, redevelopment, infill, and connectivity, are the 6 areas of the general plan, and sustainability is where they come together. That's what we're focusing on with the sustainability plan, is the overlap or the potential overlap between these 6 areas. How do we make sure that the work that's going on in these 6 areas is not at cross purposes? And more important, how can we identify and harness the synergies there so that we can achieve multiple objectives and achieve multiple co-benefits with our sustainability work? Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we didn't get a chance to have a December meeting with you to discuss this, but we would like to take a few minutes now. If you have any feedback for us, if you have any thoughts, questions, comments, we wanted to take a few minutes now to make sure that we had a chance to hear those from you. So if we can open the floor for comments and questions, that would be great. And then we will continue with a little bit more
Mr. Kukelik?
Yeah, no, I thought it was excellent, excellent presentation. The part that resonated with me that I think is very critical is that I call it the triple bottom line, but you referred to it as a Venn diagram around sustainability, where it referenced the economic, social, and environmental aspects, right? For anything that the city does, it needs to, be supported by all three aspects of that tripod, right? So I'm glad you're looking at it. I'm an environmentalist, but first and foremost, I'm also a capitalist, right? But if you cut down all the trees and you don't figure a way to replant the trees, then you don't have a tree cutting down business, right? And I think the city needs to look at any of its decisions, both from how it affects its citizens, how it affects the businesses that create jobs and economic benefit, and then how does it impact the long-term environment. So I almost see that is the lens that the city should look at all decisions from. And so that's kind of what I get excited about the sustainability plan, is it should create a lens, whether it's purchasing decisions, hiring decisions, or whatever. That's the triple bottom line, or whatever you want to refer to it, is a lens that they should make decisions.
Great. Well, that's exactly what we're trying to do. That's wonderful. So thank you. Sorry, who was speaking just then?
That was Mr. Kukulik.
Great, thank you. Other comments?
Do we have any other comments?
Staff
Kenny.
recognizes Commissioner Bossi.
There we go. Thanks.
Unmute. Thank you very much, Mark and Chair. I would certainly echo what Commissioner Kukulik just said, and the fact that sustainability is in the middle of that graph is really at the essence of everything, because sometimes we just still tend to compartmentalize sustainability, and it is the lens, and that's the biggest challenge I think we have. And the only thing I'd add to that is I continuously ask about how do we integrate the cost of doing nothing into our thinking, because we so often look at sustainability initiatives and say, oh, it's going to cost too much. And we're not comparing it to what happens if we do not do these things, and the cost of the damages that are created from doing nothing. So I'm not sure if it's possible to incorporate some of that type of thought as we do a sustainability plan. I think that would be hugely beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments? The only comment that I have, this is Chair Crispin Lazar, is although I love the incorporation of the general plan, I was only concerned to the effect that I am cautious about this becoming a general plan implementation plan. So that's probably the only caution I have in terms of how we bring this forward. It's very useful to frame it in terms of the general plan, but in terms of what this document is designed to do, it's not designed to implement the general plan overall, right?
That's correct. And one of the things, so thank you for the question. It's a good one. One of the things that was really clear in all of our interviews with staff is that, so firstly, the general plan, a lot of work has gone into that, and we're not trying to sort of recreate that. And there's also, the general plan also includes priorities in terms of short-term, medium-term, long-term. But what seems to be missing from a sustainability perspective is a focus on synergies, and people being able to talk sort of to each other across departments, across disciplines, with a common framework, and being able to literally work together. So that's kind of how we're building from the general plan and where we're going with the sustainability plan process.
Chair recognizes Mr. Stockwell.
All right. Thank you, Chair, members of the commission. I did want to make a clarification on that. I think the sustainability plan is designed to implement the general plan. So with the general plan, we have a number of broad and even more specific goals relating to environmental sustainability, and the that is the kind of the master plan at that perspective. And we're able to take that through and implement that as well. So I didn't want you to get the feeling that it's not that way, but it's also more than that. So it doesn't have to be limited to the general plan. And I think that's the sense that you're getting at. And I think Dr. Roseland was pointing that out as well. That was a strong point we made when we met with them a week or so ago, is we need ASU to help identify for us the things that even, the commission and its foresight and the council put into the general plan, but there may be more things than that we need to take the opportunity to focus on. And so that's why we were reiterating to them that we really need that input from them. And the scan is a big part of that. So I just wanted to say that it is definitely implementing the general plan through the sustainability plan, but it can be more than that as well. Thank you.
Terrific.
Thanks for that.
Staff recognizes Commissioner Bossi again.
Are you on mute?
Yes, sorry. Yes, I think, Chair, to lay some concerns and to tie in with Mr. Stockwell's comment. I mean, I think the benefit of tying it to the general plan is we may not see it as implementing it per se. It's implementing that aspect of it, the sustainability aspect of it. But when we have a document that has been so much vetted by the public and, by our residents, I think it adds punch, and it ties in what the citizens want to see for Scottsdale into the sustainability, and adds even that much more credibility and power to our sustainability plan. So I see it as a positive in linking the two, but I understand what you're saying when you say as the implementation of, but I think we can use it as a big positive to tie the two together. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Do we have any other comments, or can we go ahead and move on? Mr. Connor?
I just have a quick comment. I received a comment back from our fleet manager, and he said it seemed to be exclusive of fleet. And so I'm sorry. I guess I'm not speaking into the mic enough. But basically I said, well, what you need to be doing is to come up with the ideas that you think we need to be considering for the future. And I think that's kind of the way we have to go on some of this, because the general plan is done for certain reasons, but there are aspects of it that are left out. And fleet is one, I think, that it all, other than basically trying to limit our use of fossil fuel, there's a whole lot more they can do. So thank you.
Thanks for that. Can you go ahead and proceed?
Yes, thanks.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, so we did a workshop with the staff sustainability team last week, I believe. Things are starting to blur for me. And as I mentioned, it was around the question of what does success look like. And I just wanted to give you a sort of a brief overview of what we did in that workshop, just so you have a sense of what we're doing. Next slide, please. So again, we referenced the general plan. There's a vision statement in the general plan. For now, we're just saying let's just go with that. We're not going to. I mean, a lot of there's been a lot of comment and input into that, so we're not going to try to reinvent that. And I'm sure you're all very, very familiar with this vision statement. So moving on, please. Next slide. So the general plan has a vision. There has the vision components, sort of 4 areas about character and exceptional experience and outstanding livability and community prosperity. And then there's values, missions, and 24 elements. And these are these sort of 6 or 7 areas that I mentioned earlier. And then if you look at all of the goals, there's 118 goals in the general plan, and that's just a hard number to get our heads around. So part of what this exercise is about is trying to just see if we can bucket those a little bit to again to make sure that we're singing from the same song sheet, if you will. Next slide, please. So we had the staff do some homework, and it was a little bit of a challenge because it was over the holidays. But we asked people before the workshop to look at those 114 goals and to say which ones addressed two or all three pillars of sustainability. And by that pillars, I'm talking about the environmental, economic, and social. And we've also asked you to do that. And again, the timing hasn't been very good with the holidays, but basically everybody who's responded has said, most of these goals address all three, although it's interesting that staff said that 98 of the 118 goals addressed all three, and this group only said 42. So it's interesting. I don't know what to make of that at this point, but one of the things that we do want to be cognizant of going forward is that we take the input from citizen commissions, and this one in particular, and citizens into account, and not only the input from staff, because you are very likely to have different inputs. So next slide, please. So what we did in that workshop is we had a couple of breakout sessions. Can't remember exactly how many people we had. It was 30-ish people in total. We had them in groups of about 6 or so. And we asked them to group the goals that had similar impacts or outcomes into buckets, and then to name each bucket. So again, this is just a way of taking those 118 goals and within one of those areas around the hexagon, there wouldn't be 118 there, but sometimes there were 20 or 30, and saying, okay, can we group these in some way that makes it easier to deal with, that helps us see the similarities between some of these goals, and give it a name. And then for each of these buckets, who are the stakeholders that need to be involved? Who's necessary to help achieve these goals, both internally in terms of key city departments, but also externally in terms of citizen groups, businesses, other municipalities, government agencies, and so on. Next slide, please. So the exercise looks something like this. This is an example of one of the goals. And we asked people in a workshop group to, put these goals into buckets, and to name the buckets, and then to identify who the internal and external stakeholders are, and then to identify challenges and opportunities in terms of synergizing around these groups of goals. So what are the challenges around working together across departments and with non-city stakeholders? And what are some of the opportunities to work together? So I'll just give you an example. One of the in a discussion that I facilitated, one of the opportunities that emerged was about thinking regionally, and the idea that maybe although some of the challenges that we face have to do with municipal jurisdiction and limits on that if we approach some of these issues from a more regional perspective, working in partnership with adjoining municipalities and others with shared interests, that we might be able to have some opportunities that way. Next slide, please. Again, we're just kind of showing what this process looks like. So in this case, we took this group of 11 goals, put them into 4 buckets, gave each bucket a name, one called design, one called encouraging alternative transportation methods, one called collaboration, and one called supporting and encouraging cycling. Next slide, please. And then again, as I was saying, the next part of that is identifying the internal and external stakeholders, which we were able to do in the workshop in the time we had. And then to identify challenges and opportunities. In that part, we were only able to do for one example in the workshop that we did with staff. But what we're asking them to do now is to do some of that as basically homework before our next workshop, so that we have this filled out. So again, we're not doing this workshop with you right now, but I just wanted you to know, as the Environmental Advisory Commission, how we're approaching the way we're working with staff. Next slide, please. So we did want to have a moment here to just sort of ask if you had any feedback or comments or questions about how we are working with staff, and then we will move the discussion forward in terms of how we work with other citizen commissions and citizens, and your thoughts on that.
Any comments? Hearing none, let's go ahead and continue.
Okay, next slide, please. So in the week of February 28th, we are, the plan at this point is to hold 2 citizen workshops. We are planning for them to be in person at this point, but obviously that could change. They will be about an hour long each, and the target number of people is about 25. They will be specifically aimed at board and commission members, so yourselves for sure, and other board and commission members. And they will also be open to the public, and selected citizens will be invited. One will be held in the northern, northern part of the city, and one in the southern part of the city. Next slide. So the objective is to get community perspectives and allow citizens to bring issues into the discussion. So what we're interested in tonight is any guidance you have for us on primary areas of citizen concern, and your thoughts about citizen perspectives on issues and primary areas of concern and interest.
Mr. Kukulik.
Yeah, hi, thank you. I think this is great. When I've seen this done in other municipalities or cities or areas of the country, one thing that I think is important as you select your primary areas of concern or interest is I like focusing on areas that clearly demonstrate the economic benefits as well as the environmental benefits. And whether that's water conservation strategies that show a direct reduction in the city's water usage by moving to zero scape in certain areas, right? I can then say I've invested $100,000, removed all this watering, and I'm getting an annual savings of $10,000. I've created jobs here locally. I've created an environmental benefit, and I've created an economic thing. Their energy is another great area of doing that. So because I think, unfortunately, still out there, people like the idea of sustainability, but they still don't believe that there is economic benefits. I think there's a question out there. So if you can get low-hanging fruits that show wins, then I think that's what I would say is making sure choosing things that show clear economic benefit.
Further to Mr. Kukulik's point, I think the issue that I'm having, because of the nature of what we've been discussing, it's so broad. When you're asking the citizenry what primary areas you have of citizen concern, I mean, they can come up and say anything at that point, because you're talking about something that is so broad and encompassing. So, having some constraints on this discussion would be my comment. Did I see somebody else have a hand up in there?
Staff recognizes Commissioner Bossi.
Thank you. The areas that I see are heat concerns, big one, big, and water, supply, huge. Walkability in the summer. The keeping our natural preserves protected. Pesticides, the use of pesticides. And to Walter's point about an economic, I would say maybe energy savings. And I was possibly, I think the citizens in general think that we are much, in general, as a city and state, or have much more solar proactivity than we do. But the energy savings, I think, is always a positive that merges the economic and the environmental. So those are some areas that I would submit for consideration. Thank you.
So I guess I'm getting confused on the question. Is the question, what do we see as of issues of concern in general, or issues of, can you elucidate what you're trying to
Sure,
actually
yeah.
ask here?
Yeah, thank you. So in terms of the areas of concern, that's going to be in the workshops. What we're asking you right now is your thoughts about how we get that, how we get that from the citizens. What I mean, all of you are, you're on commissions, you're appointed by council, you engage. So we're just wondering if you have some guidance on what's the best way to engage citizens. And we're particularly, obviously, I mean, anybody can get up and say anything, but we're interested in how do we engage thoughtful citizens in a thoughtful way. And what's your experience? What would you, how would you guide us in that regard?
We have a couple people that have raised their hand, but again, I'm still having a hard time. I mean, we can tell you all the areas that we have of concern.
But that's not what he's asking.
Right.
Yeah. So what I'm asking about is really about engagement, about citizen engagement, and what's been your experience with it, in terms of any advice for us on how to do it well.
Staff recognizes Commissioner Scheck.
Yeah, thank you. I get what you're saying. I had the confusion too about what to focus on. As Commissioner Abbasi said, I understand on the economics, diving into two parts here. I understand focusing, as we keep seeing, about the economic sustainability, but I also want to remind that we should also still focus on the fact that there are environmental issues besides the fact of going on with the economic part of it. On the second part of, if you're asking how to engage citizens to get their thoughts about what's important to them, obviously social media, going to certain, going to areas. I don't, not sure how much of the public areas are going to be around. If walking into malls or walking into certain other places where you're just stopping people to ask them, is beneficial. But reaching out on social media, as I said, I do a lot for other groups, digital social media campaigns. So I've had to reach out to people for opinions in certain subjects. So that's still a way to go. We do have on Facebook, on social media, there are Scottsdale groups where you can ask questions like that to the extent of getting the information you want if you're trying to get a citizen's perspective on what they feel important is when it comes to sustainability on the level you're asking.
Thanks for that. Again, I think that we can provide our impressions of this, but that's not really our purview. I mean, we're here to tell you about, concerns that citizens have about environmental issues. And we can definitely tell you that the main issues that we see as, focus areas for environmental problems that have all three components of sustainability as, parts of it. So, in terms of recommendations for social engagement, I mean, that's something that we're trying to do ourselves. And, the city has their own avenues. We have relationships, of course, with other commissions, which I think you've already explored. But then there's the exterior stakeholders. There are various different organizations, Green Chamber of Commerce. There are other different organizations that I think that we could be tapped. I don't know if anybody else has any other recommendations on that front, or if we want to, there's two people that have raised their hands. Let's have Mr. Kuklik talk first.
Yeah, I think that I would agree 100% with what Natalie said there. And I just wanted to clarify something. I'm not saying that you don't consider the things that are not economically, I guess, as clear. I just meant as you get people to adopt a new lens, right, is what we talked about earlier. I think getting some surefire wins on the economic side is easier to then get momentum and that snowball effect. So I wasn't meaning to underwrite that. And then the other comment that I make in terms of as strategy around when you get these ideas, is not only, so you choose things that have a clear economic benefit, but then also choose things that are have a clear pathway to be achievable. And what I mean by that is, like, look at what the city can do. And then I've talked about this at other meetings before, but I'm a big believer in building codes. What Anthony is doing and what the city does around green building codes and advancing those have demonstrable economic benefit to the city and its residents through long-term decades of reduced energy consumption costs. So I think that's something that they can start doing regularly, very quickly. So anyway, thank you.
Staff, could you go ahead and call out the individuals who had their hands raised?
Certainly, staff recognizes Commissioner Bossy.
Thank you. Okay, I'm trying to think of it from a facilitator lens, because I believe what you're asking, Mark, is kind of how do we frame the discussion and kind of what we're trying to, and tell me if I'm going in the right direction. So you're saying you're walking into a workshop and you want to elicit input and conversation from citizens. So and if I'm hearing you right, you want to kind of get our input on what we're hearing from the citizens of the things out there that would help frame that discussion. So let me take a stab at these things. What if we have it like questions? Because maybe you're looking at groupings of questions, like if you're going to have discussions in 3, 4, 5 different groups. So it's why do we care about sustainability? What are the benefits to me of sustainable actions? How does the economy thrive when we are good environmental stewards? How do I protect my family's health through sustainability, and how do I sustain my quality of life? Is that moving us? I'm kind of looking at how do we connect the dots to environmental actions and our lives and our economy and our health. So, because I think that's one of the things that one of our big challenge continually is people don't connect the dots. We get up, we drink our coffee, we go to work, we do our thing, and we just think the world's just going to be there for us. And so I think if we see our role in this generation of taking this action and making big change to protect the future, but we see it more in our daily lives. Are you trying to get us to help with framing those buckets of conversation when you have these workshops?
Yeah, so connecting the dots is the perfect description of what we're trying to get people to do. And I guess my concern is we, it's easy for people to come in and just grind their axe, and like at every other public meeting, and that's not the kind of workshops we're hoping for. So we just wanted to sort of given your experience as commissioners, we wanted to know if you had any thoughts about anything that might be helpful in terms of making sure we weren't just doing the same old, same old.
Yeah. And I'm almost saying, like, what is it do you take for granted today that will not be the same in 10 years if we don't take certain actions? I mean, we take so much for granted. And I don't, whether those are the right questions that I mentioned or other questions, I'm trying to personalize it a little bit to people seeing it, in relation to their daily lives. Is that a possible? I mean, I've done a lot of facilitation in my day. So
I think that's a great way to frame it, and we'll certainly take that under advisement. That's just the kind of thing we were hoping to get from this group, and thoughts like that. So thank you so much.
Miss Brady has a point.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Lazar. I actually, I'm a newer commission member, so I would actually like to know, what does sustainability mean for our citizens? I don't know. That's a very broad term that's interpreted in very different ways, and I think it would be helpful knowing what citizens mean when they hear that term, what that means for them. And I'd also like to know, and again, I don't know what the context of your research is, but I'd like to know what kind of knowledge they have about the elements of the general plan. And what particular concerns they have, if they have any knowledge about the general plan. Thank you.
Thanks for that.
Finally, staff recognizes Commissioner Scheck.
Thank you. Listening to the other opinions, excellent opinions, but it also brings back to the point that I guess it circles back to the fact that the question is now again based on everyone's opinion, because I think we all have different opinions, even in this commission, that this is again going to a broad question that you're almost asking these opinions. But even to an example, when I was listening to the city council's meeting, there was somebody who was talking about in DC Ranch about the tree removals in their community. My thought on the fact is, if they were removing a significant amount of trees, I thought, oh, it's terrible for the environment. This person thought about their, about the prices of housing. So it's a lot of different views. And I feel if you're going to ask citizens or try to get some type of get more opinions in there, you kind of have to work on the groups of maybe breaking down, finding a certain amount of people who are more, in businesses to see how sustainability they think as a business, residents in communities to think about what they think of sustainability and their effect on communities, and people probably as strict like me who just think strictly the environment and that usage. I think it's such a broad question that you're asking. It'd be difficult just to bring random people in and commissioners in with on how many different levels people think about it. I feel like you would have to purposely meet with people from business, purposely meet some people from communities to see how things, and purposely meet with organizations that are strictly environmental to get all their opinions, and then kind of forge a common ground that they might have, where they all see the benefit together of environmental sustainability policies.
Thanks for that. I have one thing to add. As part of Scottsdale leadership, both Tammy and I participate in a sustainability day. And one of the activities that we've done in recent years has been to take a project, introduce the three pillars of sustainability, and have a group break into the 3 different groups and evaluate that project from the perspective of each pillar. So the environmental folks would come up and talk about that project, pros and cons. The social group would come up and talk about that, and then a fiscal or economic perspective. And it was very instructive for people who are not familiar with sustainability to understand that there are multiple perspectives, and that in order to further the ball and to actually have a better decision, we need to make certain that we have those synergies. And I don't know if that's the kind of environment or kind of activity that you're talking about, but in terms of trying to really engage people in a proactive discussion, I do think that you have to containerize it into, something, a discussion of some type of something. So that would be my main perspective.
Terrific. This has all been very helpful and kind of confirms what we've been thinking. But again, because it's we still have a couple weeks before this workshop, we wanted to just get your take on this. So this is helpful. Any other thoughts on this before we move on?
I don't see any. Please go on.
Okay. I think there might be a couple more slides. Can we go to the next slide? Oh, yeah. So a similar kind of thing. We'll be meeting with council after we meet with citizens. So the week is it's a ways away still. And I think we'll be meeting you again before then. But we'll be having 3 small group meetings with subsets of council. So these are informal sessions, and just wanted to ask you if you have anything you want to tell us about meeting with the council members, and anything that might be useful, since we don't know these people personally ourselves yet.
I don't know that we can weigh in on discussions with council.
Right.
Hello.
Ms. Bossy?
Thank you. Well, I think that we have the council that certainly honors and respects the input, and they would look at things that make sense for the health, well-being, quality of life, and the financial prudence, for our citizens. I mean, I think it's pretty basic from that perspective. They're trying to do the best thing and being good stewards of the resources from the citizens. So as long as I think everything that you're doing is, and that we're collectively doing, is going to be a positive and be well received, and it's got all the foundational elements to do that. And I did want to just reiterate what Commissioner Scheck said just a second ago about property values. I had that on my initial list too, because I do think that's a good entry point for citizens that they can relate to very much. And then with that lens, what does all of this do to their property values? Whether we, want it to just be purely environmental, motivational or not. I mean, people look at it from their lens. And so that's a very powerful entry point for conversation. So I wanted to echo that. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Mr. Kukulik, real quick.
Yeah, just thank you again. The only thing I would say about in talking with the council or members is, and this is just in general, right? It's what we're doing, I guess, right? There's a lot of cities have taken steps before. We're not the first men on the moon in creating a sustainability for a city of 600, 700,000 people, right? And so one of the things that I get a sense of, because we as a society need to make action happen quickly, because there are looming issues that if we don't derive. And so the one thing, a couple of things I kind of emphasize is how to start making movements quickly as a city. And one of the unique aspects of the city is we're also a water department and a trash moving services. So it's just not a city with a city hall and zoning codes. We do a lot of other things that touch a lot of sustainability issues, and we should be or could be more aggressive. And I go back, I'm a capitalist, that are smart, low-hanging fruits that the city can do that are economically sustainable, clearly, that we should be tackling today. And as you talk to the city, I think there's just money on the table that we could be saving. So thank you.
Thanks for that. About how many slides do we have left?
I honestly can't tell you because I can't see my screen. So but we're just about at the end. So
Okay, good.
um,
Please proceed.
Yeah, so I think we can skip this one. Go on to the next one. Yeah, that is it. So any final comments or questions for us?
Ms. Bossy, you have your hand up. Ms. Bossy, do you have a comment?
Mute, unmute. If we would like to participate, I'd like to identify the process for that. Thank you.
In terms of participating in the workshops?
How are we determining? Yes, how are we determining which commissioners, when,
right,
when, and what's the appropriate way to participate? Thank you.
Great. So I'm gonna turn that over to Tim Connor if he's still on to respond to that.
Yes, the intention was to ask all the different boards and commissions and committees that are recognized by the city council to select a representative and also an alternative member to support one of the citizen meetings. As I understand it right now, and I'll let Brent go ahead and jump in here. My understanding is that we have only one citizen meeting at this time. Is that correct? For two different groups.
Chair, members of the commission, this is Brent Stockwell. Let me clarify. We are still working with ASU on what the community outreach process looks like. And that's because we don't know from day to day whether we'll be able to do something remote or in person. But the current plan is at least 2 community workshops, both in the southern part and the northern part of the community. In addition to opening this to anybody from the community that wants to participate, we're also recognizing that your fellow board and commission members on all the other 20 some boards and commissions of the city have a vested interest and a real interest in sustainability as well. And so we want to use them as a group to advertise to and encourage their participation. And we're trying to make sure that we have enough capacity to do that. We're also working with them to build in an asynchronous citizen input process so that if someone didn't want to come to an in-person meeting, they could still review all the same materials and provide the same feedback, so that could be pulled in. And of course, we want to get that done so that that citizen feedback can come back to you and you guys can synthesize that both from your professional and personal experience and the other feedback that you're hearing from community members, since they know you're on the Environmental Commission, and pull that all together and review the draft report from ASU and be able to make an informed recommendation to the council on the draft report. Just wanted to clarify that's kind of the process that we're thinking. Then we'll let it rest a bit for the summer and then come back in the fall and go through a more robust outreach process that the city will do before final recommendation and adoption by the commission and adoption by the council. So we're still working out on the details on that. And still working very much with ASU on that. And we've listened to the comments and the feedback that you had tonight in doing that. Thank you.
Staff recognizes Mr. Campbell.
Yeah, I just wanted to expand a little bit about what Mark is saying, what Brent just added is we have additional meetings with the SEAC folks in February and potentially again in March to get your direct feedback. So as Mark said, we see you guys as a bit of a board of directors. And not, so we will be, your participation, that's kind of up to Tim and his crew, is welcome at the citizen workshops themselves. You will have additional opportunities directly to deal with us to provide more feedback. This particular workshop was to bring you up to date on what's been done so far and to prime you, if you will, for these next couple times we're meeting with you.
Thanks for that. Does anyone else have any commentary or questions? We really appreciate your time and all the work that you are doing. We are very excited about moving this process along. We appreciate all that you are doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We look forward to seeing you in February.
Great.
Thanks.
Okay, great. We have a kind of a full administrative agenda plus a couple different presentations. The first item that we have on here in terms of administrative matters is the nomination and election of SEEK officers. Into this end, both myself and Mr. Coletta have volunteered to serve as chair and vice chair respectively, but we do not want to leave anybody out. Does anybody want to identify themselves as a candidate for either one of these positions? I see that Mr. Johnson has raised his hand.
Maybe I'm a little too soon, but I was raising my hand to actually do the nominating of these two individuals. So I'm not answering your question. Apologies if I'm too early here.
Does anybody else have any comment? Mr. Brown. Okay, thank you. Okay, is the procedure then to go ahead and take have a nomination and then take a vote? Okay, Mr. Johnson, you can go ahead and do your nomination.
I would like to nominate Natalie Crispin-Lazar as SEAC chair and Tony Coletta as SEAC vice chair for, I believe it's for calendar 2022, unless I'm mistaken, staff can correct me. Thank you.
That is
Mr. Connor.
correct.
Thank you.
Roll call.
Roll call vote, please.
Okay. Chair Lazar, Crispin Lazar,
Approved.
Vice Chair Coletta,
Approved.
Commissioner Bossi,
Approved, and I think we needed did I miss the second? If we needed a second, I'll be that person, but I approve.
Thank
Okay.
you so much. We appreciate that. That was my bad. Sorry.
Let's see, where was I at? Commissioner Brady,
Approved.
Commissioner Kukulik,
Approved.
Commissioner Johnson,
My vote is aye. Thank you.
and Commissioner Scheck.
Approved.
Very good. It's unanimous.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. And I do want to say as chair, my job here is really to make you guys be able to do what it is that you want to do with this commission. So realistically, I do not feel that I am the leader. I just chair this meeting, and hopefully all of you feel that you have all the power that you need to make this experience the experience that you want to make out of this commission. So please, I encourage you all to do that, and I appreciate your support. Our next item here is the annual report, the 2021 annual report that was included with our packet. Did anyone have any additional comments on the annual report? There were a few additions to the last one that we put together. They're highlighted here in yellow. My intent was to try to capture a lot of the things that we've identified this past year, and then identify a few upcoming opportunities and challenges. Does anybody else have any comments on that?
Staff recognizes Commissioner Bossi.
It looks good. I'll make a motion that we approve it.
Mr. Coletta?
I have one comment, which I made to Sam before. The selection of officers and the date that's listed there, I think is incorrect. I think that should be January 2021 instead of 2020. Maybe you made the change, but I saw that. Thank you.
Noted.
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, Anthony Floyd, City of Scottsdale. I just thought of this, and it's just something to consider. As you know, we're moving forward to adopt the 2021 building codes, including the energy and the green. And the board has submitted a letter of recommendation. But we're meeting with the building advisory board. And if there are any changes, you may want to revisit. So I just want to leave that open for you. We hope to get the council sometime over the next 3 to 4 months. But in case there's some things you want to reconsider, you may want to have that in your plan.
So have there been changes since our last recommendation letter?
Some minor changes, but we have a building advisory board meeting tomorrow with the Home Builders Association and some other industry groups. So I'm not sure how that's going to
Okay.
unfold.
I appreciate that. In terms of this particular item, though, do we think that this annual plan needs to be revised to incorporate that feedback? Mr. Kuklik?
What am I hearing? Would a potential anticipated issue to add to this plan be something around continued
Support
or evolution of green building codes or building codes? I think that's a great idea because that's a huge area that the city can differentiate its products and value. I've seen there's a lot of studies out there that show building codes can increase property values if done properly.
Just looking for in this version to see if we have anything specific. Yeah.
That's something that typically
Right. Can we?
Chair, this is Sam. We can add that. We can vote on this report now with the provision to re-add that comment.
Okay. If that sounds reasonable to everyone, can we go ahead? We had, I think, one motion to support this. Maybe we have a second, but it includes the revision to add support of the green building code.
Chair,
Yes.
Commissioner Bossy. So I would update the motion, but as I say that, I realize that we probably should slightly add a little bit more onto the last bullet that addresses municipal waste diversion, and it should expand to say continue to strive for improvements in waste reduction practices. I realized when that came up that's probably a missed upcoming opportunity. We've had 2 conversations on that. There's a lot of moving parts about waste reduction, so we probably should have that as a bullet on upcoming opportunities.
So in what section are you referring to?
The upcoming opportunities, challenges, or outcomes. We've got the food waste reduction and comments and recommendations, and it's kind of interesting. The way it's divided is a little bit unique, but I think that we address just monitoring legislation, but we don't about waste diversion capability, but we didn't address.
I think that was an upcoming opportunity or challenge where I think that anything that we're talking about that we're going to have as a work product are in the previous section. So
Yeah.
if we want to go ahead, we have in here, evaluate sources of food waste and seek effective local solutions to redistribute food and reduce amount of food waste to the landfill. But if we want to add something to that section.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, we've got the green and food the green and food waste, which we definitely all have talked about substantially, but we have also broader waste reduction goals. So it's broader than just green and food waste, and I apologize, I didn't catch that sooner. In the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th bullet under anticipated key issues. Probably.
Yeah, we
one
do
more-
have that as
one-
a key
we
issue.
have- Yes, we do. Green and food waste and other landfill diversion.
Okay.
It's not just green and food waste. It's
Okay.
all landfill diversion.
Okay.
Just
So
a slight amendment.
we
Yeah.
we have green, food waste, and other
Land.
Waste
Yes, diversion. Yeah.
diversion.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, it was a little bit circular to get to that point, but thank you. And then with those two changes, I guess I would amend the motion
we-
to accept it. If
Do
there's
we
no
have-
further, there may be other comments, so I don't want to preclude any of that.
Do we have a second? Ms. Brady?
I second.
Thank
The
you so
motion.
much. Can we go ahead and have a vote? Approved?
Approved.
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 Aye.
I'm sorry, I think you said my name. I'm an I. You on mic?
Tim,
My
it's
mic
not
on.
coming
I'm-
through.
I apologize.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
Apologize. And Commissioner Scheck,
Approved.
thank you.
Thank you so much
Unanimous.
for that. The next item that we have is the meeting schedule, our 2022 meeting schedule. I think that this was discussed at our last meeting, that there were some additional changes that were made. But at this point, we just need, yes, Mr. Brown.
Chair, this is Sam Brown. I just wanted to clarify on the discussion for the March 23rd date was moved because of the quote unquote spring break for ASU. That date, we will not be allowed to go to the design studio that's occupied by another commission on that date. And we will not have the planning commission to be able to present the general plan on that date because they are tied up in that board meeting on that date. The other option was considered a week or 2 weeks prior to that date. But I just wanted to bring that to the attention. By changing our date, we are giving up our room and possibility of that general plan review.
The general plan review, you're saying could not occur on the 23rd. It could occur on the 16th.
No, I'm just saying if we go with the 23rd, we will not be in the design studio. We'll be back over here and we will not have members of the planning department to
Available.
present as was originally agreed.
But they
on the
could be there
general
on the
plan,
16th.
On the 23rd.
Okay. But they could be there on the 16th.
Affirmative.
Which is our,
And we could be in the design studio on the 16th.
okay, Ms. Brady?
And I'm looking at it as well. And there's actually 2 rooms that we could use at the design studio. So we could be there and not be in the nave, but be in the fire station next door. It's the same building, just another large room. It certainly works well for commission meetings as well. So
And that's
We'll-
the 23rd?
that's the 23rd.
Okay,
I just checked. It's not being used for that.
great. Ms. Brady?
But we'd still not have, the planning commission would still
That's
not be available. Okay.
Correct.
Is there any reason besides spring break to move it to the 23rd?
That was the primary motivation for moving it to the 23rd, spring break.
As somebody who's affected by the spring break, it does not matter to me, so we can keep it on the 16th.
Do we have any other commentary?
Commissioner Johnson.
Mr. Johnson?
I'm not going to be able to attend on the 16th, but one person shouldn't change a meeting date. Thank you.
So if we have is it possible to have the planning personnel come on the next meeting in April?
Affirmative.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm good with going ahead and moving it to the 23rd and going ahead and pushing the general plan discussion to the April if everybody else is. Ms.
So-
Fossey, you have your hand up?
Any of those dates are fine with me, but is the 9th the other alternative? That makes sense? Moving it the other direction instead of a week later, we do it a week sooner? Does that solve everything?
So did you hear the question about the 9th?
I heard it, but it's up to the commission to decide.
Does anyone have any qualms associated with moving it to the 9th, or do we want to keep it on the 23rd? Excuse me. My gut is to go ahead and keep it on the 23rd. That's what we've discussed previously without having too much change back and forth. Let's go ahead and if unless anybody has any strong opinions, could we have a motion to approve?
This is Vice Chair Coletta. I make a motion to approve.
Ms. Brady?
Commissioner Brady, I second the motion.
All right, thank you. So we are voting on going ahead and maintaining the schedule as presented. On the 23rd, we'll probably have to meet at a different location, and we will likely have to have planning come and speak in April. But I think that is the motion. Can we go ahead and have a roll call vote?
Yes, thank you, Chair Crispin Lazar,
Approved.
Vice Chair Coletta,
Approved.
Commission Member Tammy Bossy,
Approved.
Commission Member Brady,
Approved.
Commission Member Walter Kukovic,
Approved.
Commission Member Ryan Johnson,
Yes, aye. Thank you.
and Commission Member Andrew Scheck.
Approved.
Okay, it passes.
Thank you so much, guys. Our next presentation is from one of our own here. Commissioner Kukovic is going to provide a discussion on the concept of solar power leasing. I think everyone got in their packet some nice materials that Commissioner Kukovic has prepared. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I know that there was, we've had prior meetings, we've had some discussions, and I've probably expressed some frustrations around how financing or installing solar on city buildings and ways to finance it, right? And so I wanted to get the floor just to talk a little bit. My background, I've been in solar and renewable energy for 15 to 20 years now. Been in all different segments from residential to commercial to utility scale projects. I work on the financing side now, so that's my background. And we financed projects for developers for a lot of different types of nonprofits. So that's what I'm going to talk about here. Let's see. These are, basically, solar is very simple. I'm not going to go through the bullet points, but I'll just talk high level. Solar is I look at it as an economic decision. The ASU school did a great presentation around that, sustainability and the kind of three pillars. And that's why I'm a big believer around solar, especially what I call distributive solar, which is solar on buildings. And the reason I kind of considered it a three tier aspect is there's the environmental benefit of creating renewable energy that doesn't have a harm for the environment. It also has an economic, if done properly, has an economic benefit to the off taker. And then also it can create local jobs. There's a lot of good local solar installation contractors and developers here in the Phoenix, Scottsdale area. So it creates local jobs from that perspective. I'm not going to get into the pricing or net metering, but this is basically some talking points that go around it. You can go to the next slide. So what are non-tax paying entities and why is this important? So, right, so the city doesn't pay taxes. The federal government created a incentive for the citizens of the US to invest in renewable energy, and in solar specifically, they created an investment tax credit. They do this for all different types of programs. Whether you like it or not, it's the way that they've created the incentive for solar. There's other types of tax credits that the federal government has created. There's something called low income housing tax credits. There's historic tax credits. They've been around forever. This specific solar investment tax credit's been around since 2008. So it's been around for a while. I always joke Canadians shouldn't own solar either. Why? Canadians don't pay taxes. Right. So everything on this list, churches, schools, buildings, anything of these municipalities or non-tax paying entities, they should never own solar because of this tax credit concept. You can go to the next slide, Sam. Why do these entities, whether it's schools, churches, cities, municipalities, non-tax paying entities want solar? It's right. It's to reduce their monthly utility costs, right? And there's a real economic benefit if done properly to do this here for the city. Some areas also do it for shade. I've seen a lot of schools. If you look at Scottsdale Unified School District, they have a school. I think they've got solar on almost every building or carports on almost every school here in Scottsdale area. Same thing, I think, with Paradise Valley School District. They don't own those because they don't pay taxes. So this is a very important concept to understand, right? And then you can go to the next slide, Sam. This is why it's important to consider taxes when looking at solar energy, right? The benefit to owning solar energy, there's no benefit other than getting kilowatt hours in many senses, or getting electricity from the system. There are economic benefits of owning solar if you pay taxes. So again, that's very critical. I'll say it again. There are economic benefits if you own solar and pay taxes. If you don't own solar, or if you don't pay taxes, there is no economic benefit from directly owning solar. Currently, there's a 26% tax credit for off of solar if you own it. If the city were to install a solar system for $10 million and buy it and own it themselves, they would lose out on $2.6 million worth of tax benefits. Okay. So that's very important. Solar doesn't work in Arizona, California without this tax benefit, or the payback or the return on investment is astronomically long. So that's why it's critical to monetize this tax credit. Churches, Goodwills, I've seen it done on universities everywhere. This is how they do it. This is the most important part to understand. Additionally, commercial entities have a equipment depreciation expense. It's breaking out right here. This has another economic tax benefit of roughly 18%. So when you combine those two, you get a tax benefit if you're a tax-paying entity of over 44% of tax benefit. Whether you're funding it through a bond, whether you're funding it through some type of cash, lease, energy services agreement, the way that cities need to do it, because you can't, no matter what it is, you've got to monetize that tax credit and the depreciation expense of 44%. That's the cheap way to make solar work. You can go to the next slide, Sam. currently, here's the tax credits as they're broken out. I'm sorry, it has a over that. So it's currently here at 2022, it's 26%. Next year it drops to 22%, and then starting in 2024, it drops down to 10%. There's been discussions about potentially extending it, keeping it at 26%, jumping back it up to 30%. But for the city to take advantage of this, something that they should start looking at now. And I know Lori's looking at it today, but this is one area where I think you should accelerate because of the cliff here that drops off here. So the economics for solar get more difficult after 2023. You don't need to have the projects fully built by then. You just have to need to have them started. So that's just something to consider. You can go to the next slide, Sam. Like I said, I don't care if you finance it through bonds, cash, loans, donation, grants. You don't want to own this because when the city owns it, they lose that whole tax benefit. So the way that nonprofits do this is through third-party agreements. Oftentimes here in Arizona, they're called energy service agreements. In other states or other utilities are called power purchase agreements, solar leases, solar service agreements. Basically, the way that you get the same amount of electricity, but at a lower cost, is you'll enter into these agreements. About half of all residential systems are entered and installed through these third-party agreements. The vast overwhelming majority of nonprofits or non-paying tax-paying entities, cities, universities, schools, those things are all done through these third-party agreements. The only time I've ever seen in my career that cities or municipalities or non-tax-paying entities buy the system, typically, if it's very small, right? Because there's additional costs that go into these third-party agreements. So if it's maybe a sub $100,000 project, you might not do it. But once you start to get above that, the economics encourage it, is if you get like a grant or some type of free money from a federal government or some other area. Even the largest companies in the world will do these third-party energy service agreements. Walmart's, Amazon's, they are done this way. So it's very accepted, and it's the vast majority of solar is installed this way. Even utilities will sign energy service agreements with solar developers as well. So you can go to the next slide. Thanks, Sam. Some basic things when you start thinking about electricity and solar is it's all about the cost of the kilowatt hours, right? So the benefits of generating electricity, how much electricity, and whether you own the system or somebody else owns it and it just happens to be on city property, they generate the same amount of electricity. So what this share shows is electricity if you're buying the system. And so that's the cost. So next slide, Sam. And here it's basically breaks down. So I just chose an example of $3,000 per kilowatt is a approximate cost for a commercial solar system. And as you can see here, when you buy it and own it, the cost is around, under these assumptions, you'd be paying around 6.6 cents per kilowatt hour. That's when a city owns it. So the bonds that we approved, if we go through and buy it, we would pay something around this at a higher price. If you go to the next slide, if you're able to do an energy third-party services agreement, you're going to reduce your cost almost by a half, right? You're going to reduce it, or maybe you reduce it by a third. So you're going to go from 6.6 cents down to 3.7 cents. And it's all by not owning it. You're going to get the same amount of electricity. You're going to get the same kilowatt hours, but it's just a different way to finance it. And it's basically called third-party ownership. It's critical to understand. And then the next slide, I think. There you go. Yeah. Again, it just reduces your overall cost because you're monetizing the tax benefit. And this has been done through billions and billions of dollars worth of these things for cities, states. I have a developer right now that's building a project for the University of Hawaii, and it's got the same type of third-party agreement. So next slide. Right, who does this and who monetizes these tax benefits, right? It's everybody from large banks, right, to companies to solar developers. Again, anybody that pays taxes wants those tax benefits, right? And it's readily available. This is a multi-trillion or billion-dollar market is how big this tax monetization strategy is. So I think the last slide, Sam, one more. There we go. So even though solar, you think, gosh, the economics for solar in Arizona got to be great, right? We get so much of it. It's super sunny. It's not bad, but it's only good if you're able to monetize the tax credits. So that's the key component. So, I talked about, I think about 10% of our home buyers here in Arizona are Canadian or somewhere around 7-10. Oftentimes they go solar, right? They're not buying it because they can't monetize it. I kind of gave that example earlier before. So that's my small presentation, I think. So.
Thank you so much for that. Does anyone have any comments? Mr. Brown?
This is Sam. Just very quickly, Walter, what's the potential risk for an entity with this?
Yeah. Great question. So it's many of the same risks are the same if you own it or you lease it, right? Or you enter this third party agreement. It's really about making sure, because what's happening is whether you own it or you have somebody installed on your property and then you lease it or do whatever the energy services agreement is, you want to make sure that they're installing it and building it properly, right? So there's always construction risk, but that's whether you own it or lease it, because the ability to capture that tax benefit doesn't affect the city or the state. They're not playing with that tax benefit. That risk falls on that bank, whoever's playing in that tax entity market. I see it as a de-risk, because if something happens to the equipment that's being installed, it gets struck by lightning. There's a warranty issue. It doesn't perform. If structured properly, the city doesn't have to actually pay for that project anymore, because it's being done through this energy services agreement. Typically, these energy services agreements is you're buying the electricity or services to produce the electricity. Just like the city buys electricity from APS or SRP today, these energy services agreement that have become very prevalent, it de-risked it, because instead of going out and raising a $5 million or $10 million bond, it can buy monthly electricity from these energy services agreement on the buildings that it owns. I like it too, because this infrastructure that the city then creates, this energy infrastructure, whether it be carports, solar on buildings, libraries, police stations, or whatever, is going to extend beyond that 20-year energy services agreement, or whatever the term it is. The equipment, the racking, much of it will last beyond for 40 years. Once that energy services agreement expires, the city can update it itself, enter into new energy services agreement. It has a lot of flexibility around that. So.
Staff recognizes Commissioner Bossi.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Kuklik, for that great presentation. I very much agree with the principle that and I know you've mentioned these kinds of things several times in several meetings about whether looking at how we are applying solar on our city facilities, and whether or not buying it versus leasing it. And your strong premise is that leasing it is much more beneficial, which makes complete sense, because solar is additionally beneficial when you can take advantage of the tax credit. I would register a comment that would not agree with that it is not beneficial without the tax credits. It is still beneficial for many reasons, and often still there are cost savings. And there are certainly environmental benefits, and we should be doing the right thing as a municipality and looking at and providing cleaner energy. However, I very much agree with it. It is much more beneficial when you have an entity that does not pay taxes to look at the model that you are outlining here for us to consider. Thank you. Very good information.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any comments or questions for Mr. Kukulik? Very much appreciate your presentation, Walter. Thank you so much. If we have any additional questions or comments, I definitely encourage you to reach out to Mr. Kukulik because he knows a lot about this particular topic and would love to be able to share his perspective. Our next item on the agenda. Nope, sorry.
Chair, I'm sorry, Commissioner Bossy, just one more question. Is there an action proposed, or is there something in the future that we look at related to this conversation? And so just wanted to ask that question. Thank you.
Thank you. We do not have action on the agenda. However, at the end of our agenda, we can propose to discuss this at another meeting. So if there are any actionable items that we want to include on our agenda for future meetings, we can go ahead and bring it up at the end.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. So our next item here is discussion and possible commission recommendations to staff and or city council regarding the tree canopy data collected by ASU and the potential involvement of the public in a tree inventory for Greater Scottsdale. We have one of our new members here, Miss Brady, who has put together a wonderful presentation for us, and she would like to share what she has been working on.
Thank you. Yeah, this is Commissioner Brady. I hope everybody can hear me okay. No? Is this better? Or should I take the mask off? Okay. All right. Commissioner Johnson and I were tasked by the chair to gather information on the possible implementation of a citizen science-based tree inventory. So this is basically a brief overview of our findings, and you can find more details in the lengthy report that accompanies this presentation and was shared previously with the commission. Next slide, please. So the proposed citizen science tree inventory is going to be embedded, if it's approved, will be embedded in the city's larger goal to improve and strategically implement an urban forest project that would increase the number and quality of public trees and tree canopy in Scottsdale. And now there's plenty of research out there that shows the benefits of urban forests. These are basically three perspectives. And the thing that I would highlight is that there's plenty of research out there that shows their benefits, and that these three perspectives are interconnected. So for example, the shading and evapotranspiration and altered wind patterns that urban forests provide link directly to economic benefits, for example, decreased demand on cities' energy infrastructure systems, and they also create green spaces to enjoy and play in even during the summer for citizens. Next slide, please. So to give you an overview, the Scottsdale Parks Department completed a public tree inventory last year, and it showed that there were around 20,000 trees in Scottsdale parks and medians. Now, during the monsoon season last year, we lost 300 trees. The city has replanted 150 of those and plans to replant the remaining by the end of spring. So at this point, you're probably asking, so why the heck are we talking about citizens' contributions to the public tree inventory when one was already done? And there are two reasons. There's more on a further slide, but mainly it's for updating purposes, because citizens can be utilized to update and maintain the existing tree inventory. That's one benefit. And then also completion. So they can collect and report information on private and commercial properties, and also public properties that are currently not included in the tree inventory. So that's a second way that they can contribute. Next slide, please. So looking further into the benefits of involving citizens in Scottsdale's tree inventory, there's an opportunity for community engagement and investment, educational opportunities showing them that desert trees can be very useful, And it doesn't necessarily need to be that you have to recreate your northeastern landscape in your front yard here in Arizona. And it also has economic benefits, so you can educate them on that. Scottsdale is known as a most livable city. If we have urban forests like the one in the picture here throughout our city, that would probably enhance that reputation as well. And then you can't overlook the free data collection opportunities that volunteers, citizens can provide, as well as the ongoing real-time updates to changes in the tree canopy cover. So instead of the city having to do an inventory, doing an inventory once a year or once every other year, you actually have citizens contributing real-time database updates. Next slide, please. So as part of our information gathering process, Commissioner Johnson and I reached out to several cities within and outside of Arizona, and I've included information on 2 Arizona cities because we kind of drew inspiration from both of those projects. The first one is City of Phoenix. So they have a citizen forester, volunteer citizen forester program where they're Phoenix's urban forester trains volunteer citizen foresters to advocate for trees by promoting best practices regarding proper tree planting and maintenance techniques. And so that the citizen foresters take that back to their neighborhoods and communities, and it ultimately improves the ability of the city to meet their tree and shade master plan objectives. And it's a very successful program according to their urban forester. Next slide. Then there's Tucson. Tucson has a Million Trees initiative, which was launched in 2020 by the mayor, Regina Romero, with the goal to plant 1 million trees by 2030. This initiative is embedded in a larger climate change mitigation effort by the city that includes the development of green stormwater infrastructure, green rooftop gardens, and solar structures. It's a very ambitious project. It also includes a grassroots component. So the city partners with Trees for Tucson, which is a local nonprofit. And so they draw on their volunteer network. Some of them are probably in this picture here, in order to implement some of their replanting aspects of the initiative. What's really interesting is that the Million Trees Initiative advocates for a 2-pronged approach. So first, it's science-based. So they advocate for planting desert, shade, and drought-tolerant trees. And then they utilize stormwater harvesting infrastructure whenever possible to capture, retain, and divert that water to actually water the trees that they've planted. And the second aspect is actually people-centered. So they ensure that their initiative targets the most heat vulnerable communities first. And they also include in the planning and planting of new trees, citizens' opinions as to those processes. And there's much more to talk about that, but we can defer that. Next slide, please. So armed with the information that we received from others who have done tree inventories, we also consulted experts on urban community forests from the Arizona Department of Forestry and Fire Management, and also an expert in citizen science projects. And based on that feedback, Commissioner Johnson and I suggest the following implementation of a citizen science tree inventory. And again, this is based on the commission's decision-making. Next slide. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what was really highly recommended was to start off with a micro pilot project, a very contained, kind of like an experimental project that would allow us to see what kind of feedback or responses we would get on a very, very small scale. And we thought that using the city's Earth Day, Arbor Day celebrations would be a really nice venue to do that. Because it would, one, allow us to work closely with city and library staff to kind of mold the plan. And it also the celebrations draw in citizens from a wide variety of walks of life. So that would be good. So the goals of this would be to, number one, educate citizens that we have a tree inventory on an urban forest project, to determine how citizens' engagement might be and what their interest level is, test the usefulness of the tree inventory ArcGIS app, and also see whether citizens would generally be interested to include biodiversity tracking through the iNaturalist app as one of the suggested apps. And then, of course, we would also want to see if the data that actually is collected would be useful to the city's database, tree inventory database. Next slide, please. So if the micropilot project is successful, and with successful, I mean the citizen response is positive and the data collected is useful, we would suggest another, a more expanded pilot project to further test citizen involvement. So for example, we could focus on a low-income neighborhood, perhaps in South Scottsdale with limited tree cover, and then this is key, work in partnership with a local NGO like Trees Matter or the Master Naturalist Program. And we could draw on their network of volunteers who already know about trees. So training citizen foresters through that program would be a fairly low lift. And then we could determine the ability of citizen foresters to educate citizens in that area, further test the usefulness of the apps, and also the data usefulness on a more expanded basis for the tree inventory database. Next slide, please. Thank you. So there's always potential limitations, and there's always ways to address them one way or the other. I've just listed 3 of the main ones that come up when you're talking about citizen science. So the main one that usually comes up is data quality issues. There's many ways to address that, but I think we recommend looking to the city of Phoenix and using or emulating their volunteer citizen forester program, because that draws on people who are trained, and then you could get the quantitative and qualitative data. The next thing that often is raised is concerns about the vulnerability of the tree database to hacking. Many ways to address that, but the easiest way would be to just limit access to authorized users, and those would be the volunteer citizen foresters that we've already trained. And then finally, involving and educating the public is time consuming, and it really is. But if you create a network of volunteers to help continuously promote and contribute to the project, and you partner with the local NGOs, nurseries, and food banks, actually Tucson partners with a food bank, and they include food and fruit trees in their plantings as well, then you can overcome some of those limitations. And there's also the ability to draw on the Master Naturalist Program to fill the volunteer training gap. And so basically, you can include this in citywide project promotion, but to keep citizens engaged more long-term, which is, I think, something that we would want, we would also want to recognize their efforts in reports and maybe do a picnic or acknowledge citizen foresters that have gone above and beyond what is required of them. Next slide. And just real quick, by using citizens science, we can actually deepen the linkages to some of the conservation goals in the general plan, because we're then expanding this knowledge to not just public properties, but also private and potentially commercial properties. Next slide. And so basically the take-home messages are the benefits of involving citizens in tree inventory efforts far outweigh the costs, particularly when looking at this through a longer-term lens. There's greater buy-in that you can get from citizens. Citizens feel empowered and they feel like their voices are being heard. And you can draw on that not only to engage them in this project, but also potentially in future other climate change mitigation efforts like water conservation. Partnerships are really important, and I highly recommend it was strongly recommended to do these pilot studies. And that's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for that. Do we have any questions or comments for Ms. Brady? Mr. Coletta.
Yes, thank you, Chair. When you looked at the other cities like Tucson and Phoenix, were you able to determine or see what kind of input you had from the citizens, if it was really good, robust, whatever? Thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's a great question. Yeah, so the city of Phoenix, I talked to the urban forester and he said that there was great participation and engagement. People were really excited about it, and then the pandemic hit, and so they kind of had to shut the program down. They are in the process now of reinvigorating the program. They got extra funding, and this year they're going to expand the urban forester to also include updating the tree database. And they're anticipating to reinvigorate the old connections that they made. And in Tucson, there was a lot of buy-in in Tucson. They have a lot of partnerships, a lot of volunteer networks. It's a very broad and success. As of now, it looks like a very successful program.
Mr. Connor?
Okay, I'll be very brief then. Yeah, there's 2 hours. I would yield to the other commissioners. that are
Okay,
on the line.
thank you. Staff?
Staff recognizes Commissioner Scheck.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say that that was a fantastic presentation. I really enjoyed it. I like the idea because last time we spoke, Commissioner Brady, we spoke about the difficulty of monitoring the data because that could be a full-time job. So that's a great idea for training, I guess, what we call foresters to help out with making sure the data is clean. My question is based on, I guess, an overview of going through this process. Do you know how large of a team we would need to monitor this data to make sure that the data is clean and correct?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I'm not sure that I'm able to answer that though, because it depends on a lot of things, right? It depends on who's doing the training and how the training is conducted and what kind of data ultimately gets uploaded. So I think that's something that needs to be worked out in a citizen science program. One thing that I didn't mention is that a lot of these people that we talked to, Commissioner Johnson and I, said that they would be happy to provide feedback on their individual programs to the commission if there was interest. And the academic expert that I spoke to with regard to citizen science project in general, she has expertise in that. She mentioned that she would also be willing to give a presentation with regard to that.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't really answer your question, did I?
Oh, no. I know there's more, obviously more work to go into that. I was more out of curiosity. Again, the presentation was fantastic. I also just had one more question, more asking wise on this is when we're coming to replacing trees and planting trees, I know the city of Scottsdale will be planting trees. Are we also, I said, organizing other organizations to come in and plant trees and time? Is there, I know I bring this up, Israel does a lot of tree planting and they actually have basically donations to plant a tree in honor of people, and you get certificates and saying and plaques near the tree that's saying in honor of this person or dedications. Is there something that we can do to something like that would promote the citizens of Scottsdale to donate to tree planting if we did some type of program in that sense?
I love your question because it brings something up that I cut out of my presentation. So Tucson actually does that. So what they have is like they have in their program, they have citizens can donate money and for trees. So then trees are planted in memory of somebody or in recognition of somebody's efforts. And they have these business I can't remember what they call it. So business can basically contribute money to the Million Trees Initiative, and then they're acknowledged there as a partner on the website and get to give some kind of a green label. So that's the way that Tucson is utilizing donations in order to supplement their funding.
Oh, very cool. Thank you very much. Again, really fantastic job on the presentation. It was really well done.
Staff recognizes Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you. I'm just going to make a quick comment here. I'm delighted to be associated with this, and I think Dr. Brady's presentation. I second, it was amazing. I noticed some of the photo credits were Michael Brady. I don't know exactly who that is, Uta, but I think the pictures were terrific too. Earlier in the meeting tonight, Commissioner Bossy mentioned heat mitigation as a big issue for the city. I wholeheartedly agree. And I think we've well established, the research is well established that, tree planting and urban forestry can go a long way toward mitigating current and future heat issues. So I am dedicated to this issue along with Commissioner Brady and any other commissioners. I know the chair, Chrisman Lazar, and Commissioner Scheck, we're also working sort of in parallel on another idea, but I think this is a terrific initiative for the commission. And so I'm both feet in on this one, and I look forward to the pilot ideas that were mentioned here. So, and by the way, Commissioner Brady is very generous with her credit to me. I mostly attended meetings. She also wrote a terrific 12-page document that accompanies this presentation. So full credit to her. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And I do think that the premise of doing the pilot can help us understand a little bit more about some of the questions that have come up through here. I mean, if we're really going to evaluate the pilot project, we need to understand, how we're going to study it and what kind of lessons learned we're going to get from that. Mr. Kuklik?
Yeah, a couple of things I would just comment on. Number one, I always think schools are a good engagement strategy around this, right? Because that's also a sustainable, ongoing. The schools are never going to go anywhere where NGOs or sometimes third-party organizations can ebb and flow based on their donations and their leaders of those companies or those entities. Sometimes if you have a strong leader that's there, it can last for 10 years, but then that leader leaves and then that NGO is not sustaining. Where schools and kids, and if you teach kids about how to do inventory, then it's something that they can participate out throughout their life as a citizen of Scottsdale. The other things that I go back to is, in addition to a city, we also touch probably every citizen or at least every household and business with our water department and our trash department. It'd be interesting to look at ways, if we're really serious about inventory, that you could also engage citizens' engagement in our inventories through our water department, right? Everybody gets a bill from the city of Scottsdale once a month. It'd be interesting if we determined this was very important. You could probably do some type of survey or online survey through our citizens as well. So those are a couple things. And then I'll go back to my drum that I always beat on is, if we really think this is important, building codes, right? You could say every new commercial building is required to plant so many trees and create so much tree cover within 5 or 10 years. And I know we do that somewhat, but we could be a lot more aggressive and a lot more thoughtful about it today and support what the ongoing stuff and go beyond the green building code if it's important for us as a city. So.
Thank you for that. Mr. Connor, did you have some
Yeah, I'd
comments?
just like to follow up a couple issues that Mr. Kukulik brought up. And also, thank you very much, Ms. Brady. That was very good, I thought. First of all, we are working with our planning groups to establish a tree ordinance. We need that for the Tree City USA. They're requiring that now. What that looks like, we're not exactly sure. However, we know that for an ordinance to be created that's actually in our zoning code or our zoning ordinance, it has to be initiated by either the Planning Commission or the City Council. So I think that some coaxing through the City Council members might be a good idea to try to ask them to please help us get there. If you look at some of the other communities throughout the metro area, they do have ordinances. One of the biggest problems we find is that we do mandate through the building development standards that the commercial businesses for sure have to plant so many trees. And the problem is that they don't have to keep them. We don't have a way to enforce that. We do, if we get upset with somebody, tell them, hey, why didn't you put those back in? A lot of times it doesn't happen just because of the capacity of our staff. So I think that that's another place that we need to look at. Additionally, I just wanted to ask Ms. Brady, Did these communities all have urban foresters in their staff?
Tucson did not.
They did not.
No, they hired a coordinator, but she comes from an NGO background.
Very
The-
interesting. Okay, very
Yeah.
good. Because I know that Tempe and Phoenix both have urban foresters in a forestry program. So,
We did look into Tempe, but they didn't include a citizen science aspect at all.
not yet. Okay.
Phoenix is trying to do it now this year,
Yeah.
pandemic permitting.
Okay.
And then Tucson already has that.
Yeah. Okay. Very
Well,
good.
actually, for them right now, it's just uploading. So citizens can, so they have these volunteers that submit data. And in addition to that, citizens can go to the website, Tucson's website, so the link on that website, and upload information on new trees or trees missing
Okay.
through the web page.
Very good. The other thing I really appreciate too is that the coordinated effort of green infrastructure. I think that, water harvesting is only sensible. We're here in the desert. I mean, it just makes sense. So we do have some water harvesting details or their green infrastructure details that we've put together. We're trying to get some of those pushed through into the standards for MAG so that they're buildable, they can point at something and say, use this detail. So the more we can support that, the better. I think those are things that I would definitely be behind the whole way. So I'm definitely interested in trying to help this effort and keep it going. So very good.
What's MAG again? I don't remember.
MAG is the Maricopa Association of Governments. And they have a book they call the Blue Book, which basically has all the details that are used by civil engineers and builders, basically. They just point at a piece on the paper and they say, use this detail. And the specifications go along with that. So we've been fortunate. We've gotten, I think, 2.5, maybe 3 through right now of the 10 that we were trying to accomplish. So we're still working on that. Thank you.
Thank you. I did want to add, I had that the conversation about memorial trees and that whole thing. I had seen this before because I had done some other research, but Scottsdale does have a program. They have a program for both bench and tree memorials. So right at the moment, it's mediated through the Parks and Rec. So, yep.
Staff recognizes Commissioner Bossi.
Mrs. Bossi?
Thank you. Echo everyone's sentiment about what an excellent presentation. What a way to enter into the commission. Wow. Just a couple of thoughts. This is a great community builder, and creating a sense of community is one of the best ways to enhance our quality of life. And it actually helps property values, I will say. So I'm wondering if we might explore some sort of partnership with the neighborhood commission on this. So I just put that out there. And I also echo what Commissioner Kukler said. He was talking about the utility bills, and I'm wondering if we could do $1 towards plant a tree, ask people if they want to add to their payment for that, because there is some precedent to do things like that. And I don't know that this is the time, but at some point, if we're talking about reaching out to council, maybe the next meeting, we sort of work on towards a letter to council with some kind of a recommendation. It's very exciting, and this is something that I think most everyone can agree on, that planting trees is a good thing. So very exciting. Thank you so much for your work on this. And I look forward to supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Connor?
Yes, there's one issue that I still need to work through with our water resource director, executive director. When we presented the Cooler Scottsdale package that we presented with them, there were a few members of the council that were concerned about a balance between water usage and the trees. And I think that right now, Executive Director Biesmeyer is looking at that. I think that we can find different examples that will show that it's very beneficial. I think that the idea of eliminating turf is kind of the biggest thing. We want to try to get that back and also not have it be artificial turf, but that's a whole different issue. But in any case, those are some things that we need to balance, I think, and make sure that we have all that ammunition before we get too deep into this. So
Thank you for that. Ms. Brady?
I was just going to say that those are issues that we actually addressed with Tucson, because I was flabbergasted when she mentioned that food bank, the partnership with the food bank, and that they actually advocate for fruit trees and citrus trees because of their high water use. And she said that the part of it is the green infrastructure, but part of it is also recognizing that these trees come in communities, right? It's not just planting a tree here or a tree there. It's actually looking at the broader picture, at the ecosystem context, so to speak, so that you plant trees that can kind of balance that kind of water usage. And again, this person also said she'd be happy to speak to us about her experiences if we want to tap into that.
Thank you. I think one more comment here, Mr. Coletta.
Thank you, Chair. Tim, a question for you. I think I've heard this before, but I forgot. You were asking about other cities having urban foresters on staff. Does Scottsdale?
We do not at this time. We have several arborists, a dozen arborists. It's a matter of someone stepping forward and being moved into that position, I think, is what it comes down to. That's something that the other assistant city manager is overseeing. So I do work with the other assistant city manager, Bill Murphy, quite a bit. And we're trying to pursue that program. And that goes along with this tree ordinance issue that we're trying to do. So.
Who is an arborist too. So that's his training and background. And so if we need a chief urban forester, that may be a new title for our assistant city manager as well. So,
and if anybody wants some fruit, I've got a grapefruit tree is overproducing right now. So they're pink. They're the pink ones, ruby reds. I'll bring them in.
I do.
Okay, I'll bring a box then.
So further to your proposal, you have identified Arbor Day and Earth Day as something that we would want to coordinate with, and that is pretty short, a pretty short time frame. We have had initial discussions. Mr. Schick and I went and met with our GIS group. I think that he probably gave a report out at our last meeting, and I would say that in order to make certain that that is a doable thing, we need to reach back out to them to see if that integration into the GIS system is something that's possible. So I'll definitely take that as an action item. Go ahead.
On that point, we might be able, because it's just such a small project, we might be able, and basically the way I had envisioned it, talking to the experts, was kind of that library staff would hand out devices like or the people could download these apps by their choosing and then go outside, and maybe somebody from the library, it would even be an opportunity for city council members to make an appearance and walk around with people just around the library and log. So it would be basically logging the same tree over and over. And so that would give us some insights into how people use these apps and how useful they are for the average for citizens of all walks of life. And the nice thing about those celebrations are that there's children there, there's older people there, there's younger people that are drawn in. So we get a whole mix of people, but we don't necessarily have to completely link it to, I think there's ways of setting that up, and I still need to look into that and perhaps talk to Commissioner Scheck about it, that we can just upload the data somewhere, because it's not going to be quote unquote usefully adding to the tree database because it's just around the library. It's just, that's. So
Understand it. It is a study.
Right. It's just kind of like a little petri dish of how does this work?
Okay. Thank you.
Just kind of, this is ahead of the things that I was going to discuss today, but one of the things that we had planned to do this year at Earth Day and Arbor Day, we're planning on a week-long celebration with some other things going on at the library throughout the month of April for the citizen science projects and things of that nature. But we're also going to celebrate Earth Day by giving away about 100 trees. We did that last year at the farmers market, and it was very successful, and everybody enjoyed it, I think. And I have what's called, and I need to give these to you guys, they're Echo Gecko beanie babies. We give those out to the kids. We've got about another 300 of them or something. So we try to make it an event that's enjoyable by all. So, but definitely, yeah, we'll talk some more about that. Thank you.
Thank you. We are getting a little late in the evening. So I do want to have us have some time for the remaining items. The next item on our agenda really was the annual work plan. I did not receive any comments on the annual work plan, except for, I think you provided one, right? It was more, sorry, I evidently did not. If we can go ahead and table that, and if I can tell people, please reach out to me on the work plan and we can go ahead and discuss that further. I would say let's table that to next meeting so that we can get through the rest of the items here. But I ask that everyone take a look at this and really identify what priorities you see that we need to discuss this year so that we can make certain that we can accomplish that by the end of the year. So please, if we can go ahead and table that and move on to staff updates, that would be great. General updates, Mr. Connor?
Sorry about that. At this time, we have not moved forward on a green purchasing plan yet. I think that that's going to come in the future. We've got a new, and I'm stealing Brent's thunder, we have a new director. So it's not here yet. She's not here, but will be in next month. No, actually March. Next month. And I think that she'll give us input on what we should be doing. I think that'll be good. She's a member of the urban directors of sustainability, so USDN. So very good qualifications. Let's see, what else do I have? The Arbor Day, Earth Day thing, I think we've already discussed. And really, that's about it as far as what we've gone over. We've already gone through most everything.
Tim,
So-
this is Ryan Johnson. Just to remind you and the chair that I have had one initial conversation with a faculty member at ASU about green purchasing. It's her specific area of research and study.
Good.
And she's on standby for whenever we want to have her come in, subject to availability, of course.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Very good. In the meantime, we'll start to prep the purchasing director and let them know that we're looking at that. So they're not caught off guard. So that's all I have today. Anthony, Sam?
Yes, Anthony, city staff. Real quickly, I alluded to this earlier. The Building Advisory Board meeting is tomorrow night, where I'll be presenting the IECC, the Energy Code, the Green Construction Code, and the Residential Code. And we've been communicating with the home builders for the last probably 6 months, but they're going to come and make public comments in opposition, particularly with EV charging infrastructure and a few other things. But we also have the Arizona Multifamily Housing Association speaking. We think they're going to be lukewarm and partially in opposition, but we expect to have support coming from both the utilities, APS, SRP, a couple of citizens who live in condo buildings who are coming out. Also, the Southwest Energy Efficiency Project will be here in person to speak in support. Where tomorrow night is not for action on the agenda, so there will not be a vote. We're hoping that at the February meeting of the Building Advisory Board will be the final recommendation and vote to take forward to City Council. At the earliest, we would be in council at City Council April, but I think maybe it might be more like May. But I'll keep you posted.
Thanks for that. Mr. Stockwell?
Yes, I have an announcement that no one has spoiled already. So let me actually read the full announcement to you. So after an extensive nationwide recruitment process, we are pleased to announce that Lisa McNeely has accepted our offer to become Scottsdale's new sustainability director. She'll start March 14th, 2022. So I think that's a good thing that you delayed the March meeting, and her office will be here in this building. Lisa is currently the Director of Sustainability for the City of Baltimore, Maryland, and has served in that role since 2017. She also served as Director of Sustainability and Energy for the University of California, Berkeley, and in other roles, to name a few, the Nature Conservancy, a federal government contractor at the Grand Canyon National Park, the Pew Center for Global Climate Change, the White House Climate Change Task Force, and the U.S. Department of Energy, to name a few. She also earned her master's in public affairs with an environment focus from Princeton University and a bachelor's of science in mathematics from Davidson College. So we will get her cover letter and resume out to the commission tomorrow so that you have that detailed information. But we're very pleased that she'll be joining our team, and we think she's an excellent addition to the city of Scottsdale, and she's very much looking forward to returning to Arizona. So that is, if that wasn't, I think that's we've been working on this for a while, so I'm glad to announce that for you. And I know Aaron and I and Randy are all very excited to introduce her to the team and add an additional staff member in this area. The Sustainable Scottsdale Steering Team has been, as you heard earlier, very active in working with ASU on the sustainability plan. And we actively worked in each one of those areas that they talked about to kind of comb through the entire general plan and identify stakeholders and challenges and opportunities and all things to do kind of the behind the scenes work necessary to help ASU with that and help the commission with that. So that is really our focus for this year, is to help get that sustainability plan done. And of course, that's not all the city is doing in this area. The updates continue in all the different areas as well. So thank you very much.
I can't help myself, but after 4 years working on this,
Yes, we are very much appreciative of all your efforts on this. We are ecstatic that this has occurred. And, as someone who participated in the actual interview process, Ms. McNeely did shine. She is somebody that we are very excited to make certain that, that she's a rock star, and we appreciate the city's selection of her for this role. I do have a question in terms of how the sustainability plan is fitting within your initiatives process. Are you guys going to kind of meld the two?
Sure, Chair, members of the commission. So you'll recall that when we started working on this, the council's organization strategic plan had a general objective relating to environmental sustainability. When they updated their plan this summer, they made it very specific and strategic on the completion of the sustainability plan. So instead of having a relatively broad thing, they made it very focused and time driven. And so we're working on the sustainability plan to get that done fully and approved by council by December. We still kind of update on all of those major bucket areas, so that work hasn't stopped. But and of course, we're also talking about an interim period when the general plan had not yet been, it had been reviewed and approved, but it had not been updated yet. So sometimes I get really into an answer and then you kind of go, especially late. So we're still working on all those things in all the areas, but our shift really has, we really have shifted focus to the sustainability plan because the council changed that priority. I will say that we will be working with them to prioritize the first 1 to 5 year elements in the general plan, and those things will become our organization strategic plan moving forward. So I think we're getting in a better cycle. And of course, everything that's in there they're all the same types of things. So it's kind of a circular process. But we're very much looking forward to having a new leader coming on board to help us with all this and get it all in context. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we have one last item before we can all leave, and that is review of anticipated items for our next month's agenda. And remember that we will have ASU as part of that agenda for next month in terms of trying to have another workshop on sustainability planning. So with that, I open up the floor to identify items that we want to include either pretty much on February. And if there are items that we need to consider in future years as well, or future meetings as well, we can discuss that if they need to be in February versus in the future. Ms. Brady.
Commissioner Brady, yeah, thank you. So there's two items. One, I would like to put the pilot proposal, the mini pilot proposal back on the agenda. And then I also wanted to draw attention to the public comment that you mentioned at the beginning of the meeting from Mike Cataldo as a subject for discussion and possible future action.
Thank you so much. And just so everybody remembers that the public comment was actually associated with leaf blowers. Yes. Yep.
Sorry, can't hear that.
This is Sam. Could I get clarification on that agenda item? Is it the public comment was primarily for the noise, but is it our intent to discuss it on a broader issue?
I think it is our intent to review it and have a discussion.
Just that public comment is my question.
Ms. Brady?
I already added it to the agenda, the agenda that we approved earlier today. It was one of the future potential items, but that was much broader. It wasn't just noise, it was related to pollution, air pollution as well. So I don't know, I'm new at this. Maybe I went about introducing this the wrong way.
No, we're specifically talking about an agenda versus that was our annual plan or our annual report where we identify future items that we can discuss as a group in the future for this year coming up. But what we're discussing right now is just for next meeting.
Say that again.
So I just differentiated between the annual report that we approved versus the discussion item right now in the agenda to add things to the agenda for February. So
And this is Sam. Could I just have a recap on what the leaf blower agenda item will be?
you made the recommendation, so that's why I'm looking to you. Sorry.
I know. Commissioner Brady trying to backpedal here. Basically, I just want to address the public comment and discuss
discuss
if
it.
there's something, if this is something that the commission wants to bring up in the future.
Okay. Has there been previous research on the leaf blower issue that the city has
Do you want to
discussed?
give the overview of the county's position on that, Sam, for air quality?
You don't have to get into the details. I just wanted
Yeah.
to know whether or not there has.
I receive a lot of citizen complaints and concerns. I've personally have had a lot of personal conversations with them, both the factual basis and the only way something moves is with broad public support
Okay.
via this commission or city council.
Okay. Is next meeting a forum that you would be able to update us on this particular issue?
If that would be the agenda item for staff member to provide background information, both regulatory and a summation of citizen concerns, yes.
And is that something that can be done by next meeting?
What?
Is that something that can be done by next meeting?
Affirmative.
Okay. All right. Any other items that we want to make certain that we include on next month's meeting?
Staff recognizes Commissioner Bossy.
Ms. Bossy?
Thank you. I guess I would ask Mr. Kukovic, do we wish to put the solar presentation content up for possible recommendation at the next meeting? Is there any kind of proposed action that you would wish to further at the next meeting? If so, then I would suggest that be on the next agenda. And as far as the tree project, it sounds like we still have a little bit to do before we take any kind of more formal action. But I just bring that up as well, and I probably defer to Commissioner Brady on that to see if we need that as a potential action item next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. I do think that she included that as part of her pilot proposal. I think that's what she was referring to.
Yeah, I got at the pilot part, but I didn't know if we were ready to get, more into a more formalized conversation of recommendation to the council since that was brought up. So I did hear her talk about the pilot project, but maybe it's a little premature as far as the broader action. But again, I kind of bring that up to call her attention to it and ask if that's something that we might want to have, and maybe we broaden the pilot project into, a little bit more about possible action if there's more progress by next month on the larger tree project.
Okay.
Or just pilot project and that's it. We start.
No,
with
no,
that.
I think that that's a good recommendation. So we'll go ahead and expand that to include potential action associated with a recommendation to council. In terms of solar, some of the discussions that we've had previously, I mean, have been around the mechanism for us to be able to be effective in this type of environment. And Mr. Brown.
This is Sam. If I may say, staff is actively working this subject. Actively. They are very aware of the commission's interest in this. And with the resources we have, they're very involved in it. And my recommendation would be for the commission to receive a staff update at some point in the future from a full research by staff on the subject and what the constraints are, what the limitations currently. That would be my recommendation. I would say it would be premature for this commission to make a recommendation without knowing what staff, how far they are in this progression. Thank you.
Absolutely makes sense. But after hearing that, would the next meeting be of appropriate? Do we just add the words potential action at the next meeting if we're going to do that? Yeah. And I don't, again, I'm just kind of being responsive to the subject matter. It does seem like we've never taken a formal stand one way or the other. We've had several conversations on it. So we've never made a formal recommendation to look at the alternatives. But again, we wouldn't want to do that. I'm not suggesting we are doing that. I'm saying, yes, we absolutely want to hear what the staff has, what you're saying, Mr. Brown. That would be super helpful. After doing that, can we just put potential action simply whenever we do that update?
Would we be able to have a presentation at our next meeting, Mr. Brown?
I cannot answer that.
Okay.
I would think the next meeting would be premature.
Okay.
Just guessing. It's an enormous undertaking considering all the variables, both within the city and the external factors. Thank you.
Totally understand. I do want to be responsive to the item, and I don't want it to fall off of the radar. So if that is something that staff could, provide some input back, that would be great.
Should we put that tentatively for March?
Again, there are definitely issues associated that may or may not be associated with the purview of our commission. And so we need to be sensitive to that, but we also need to allow staff to have the opportunity to, prepare something for us. So I would love to, I guess, make the request to staff to go ahead and get back to us in terms of what would be viable.
I will have a discussion with the staff and pass their recommendation back to you, the status on that.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kukulik? Okay. Do we have any other items? I mean, we probably have a full agenda unless somebody else has anything else we need to add to February. Okay, if I
Commissioner
don't,
Johnson here, I'll tell the faculty member that we're looking later in the year on the sustainable purchasing, or, perhaps the spring, but not February. Thank you.
I would really love to have our new sustainability director in place to be able to listen to that. So in terms of trying to make certain that we have that in either March or April would be ideal.
Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, I think we've moved through our agenda. If anyone has any motions?
Chair, I move
Vice
that
Chair
we adjourn.
Coletta, motion to adjourn.
I'll second that, Commissioner Coletta. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. I think we do not need to take a vote. Thank you very much for your attention. Appreciate
Congratulations, Natalie.
Thank you. This meeting is